The noise had slowly become a part of life. The kind of noise that doesn't come from the streets or the traffic outside, but from the mind itself. It was the noise of too many thoughts, too many worries, and too many things demanding attention all at once. For a long time, the days blended into each other. Mornings started with rushing, afternoons carried the weight of unfinished tasks, and nights ended with tired eyes staring at the ceiling. It felt as if the world expected more than a single person could give. Every day came with its own demands. Work brought endless deadlines. Family needed time and energy, and even the phone never stopped buzzing. Messages, notifications, reminders, and calls all adding to the feeling that life was moving too fast. There was no room to breathe. There was no pause. There was no moment where the mind could sit still. On one particular evening, after a long day, the weight felt heavier than usual. The room was quiet, but inside, everything felt loud. There was a sense of being stuck in a loop, repeating the same tired routine without any break or peace. The kind of exhaustion that sleep alone couldn't fix had grown inside day after day. Sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the phone with no real purpose. The feeling of burnout was stronger than ever. The screen lit up with videos that had nothing to do with what the heart needed. Comedy clips, news headlines, random posts, none of it felt comforting. It all felt like more noise. Fingers moved across the screen lazily, not looking for anything, not expecting anything. And then, almost by accident, something appeared that didn't look like the rest. A simple thumbnail. A soft background. The title was written clearly, 50 Ultimate Classical Masterpieces for Soulful Relaxation. Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven. The words didn't promise energy or excitement. They promised something quiet, something gentle, something peaceful. For a moment, the scrolling stopped. The mind didn't know exactly why. Maybe it was the word relaxation. Or maybe it was the mention of names heard long ago in school or on the radio. Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven. These names felt old, not familiar. They carried a certain respect, a certain calm. The video was tapped without much thought. Maybe because nothing else felt right. Maybe because something inside was tired of the noise and wanted something different. The first few seconds were silent, and then a soft melody filled the room. The sound was slow, gentle, and smooth, like warm water sliding over cold hands. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It simply existed, settling into the air with ease. For the first time in days, the body relaxed a little. Shoulders dropped slightly, breathing softened, and the mind, which had been restless all day, paused. It wasn't that the worries disappeared, they didn't, but something softened them. The music didn't demand attention. It didn't push itself forward. It simply created a space where the heart felt a little lighter. The melody had a way of speaking without words. Each note carried a small emotion, gentle enough to not overwhelm, but strong enough to be felt. It was nothing like the fast songs usually played on the phone or the background noise heard in stores. It was calm, pure, and peaceful. As the music continued, thoughts that had been running wildly began to slow down. It felt like the mind was finally allowed to breathe. Memories came quietly, not painful ones, but soft ones, moments of peace from childhood, sitting near a window on rainy days, walking through open fields, hearing distant birds in the early morning. The music unlocked these moments without effort. The room felt different now. The tension in the air faded. The heaviness inside started to shift, even if only a little. It was surprising how something so simple could create such a difference. It felt almost unreal, as if a small door had opened inside the heart, letting in a bit of fresh air. The playlist continued from one track to another. Another soft piano piece followed, this time with gentle touches that felt like raindrops on glass. Chopin's style felt slightly emotional, slightly nostalgic. It carried a feeling that was both warm and fragile. The notes seemed to speak directly to the feelings that never found the right words. The next piece changed the mood again. Beethoven's music had a deeper, richer tone, like a quiet river flowing under moonlight. There was strength in the sound, but also sadness. It was the kind of music that made a person feel understood without being judged. The kind that reminded someone that even the strongest people had moments of struggle. Listening to these melodies, something changed gently inside. For the first time in a long while, the heart felt connected to something that wasn't stressful or demanding. The music didn't expect anything. It didn't ask for productivity. It didn't remind of unfinished tasks. It only offered a space, a calm space, simply exist. Minutes turned into an hour, and the playlist kept moving forward. By the time the phone showed that several tracks had played, the body felt heavier in a good way, axed enough to want sleep. The eyes were no longer fighting to stay open. The mind wasn't racing like usual. It felt like discovering a small miracle without looking for one that night. Sleep came easier. Not the usual restless sleep where the mind tossed and turned, but a deeper kind. The kind that makes the body feel renewed. It was the first peaceful sleep in weeks. The next morning felt slightly different too. The world didn't magically become easier. Problems didn't vanish. Responsibilities were still waiting. But there was a small shift inside, a kind of quiet strength that hadn't been there before. A small reminder from the night before that calm could be found, even in simple ways. Throughout the day, the memory of the playlist stayed in mind. During a short break at work, the thought came again. Maybe playing the music for a few minutes could help. And it did. The moment the notes flowed through the earphones, the stress softened again. Classical music, something once ignored, now felt like a small escape. Not an escape from life, but an escape into a quieter part of the heart. That evening, without needing to think twice, the playlist was played again. It became the sound that ended the day. Not because it was a habit yet, but because it felt necessary, like the body and mind were asking for it. Each note brought a sense of comfort. Each melody felt like a calm voice saying, "It's okay. Just rest for a moment." It was strange how something discovered by accident could become so meaningful so quickly. But that is how life often works. Sometimes peace arrives quietly, without announcement, without planning, without effort. And as the night light glowed softly in the room, the music once again wrapped the space with calm. The playlist that had been clicked by chance became the beginning of something important, something that would shape the days to come. For the first time in a long time, the heart felt hopeful. Not in a dramatic or loud way, but in a simple, gentle way. The kind of hope that feels warm inside the chest. The kind of hope that makes a person believe that maybe, just maybe, peace was not as far away as it once seemed. And with that small spark inside, the journey quietly began, a journey that started with a tired soul, a random playlist, and the soft, timeless magic of Mozart, Chopin, and Beethoven. The next days moved forward in a slow, gentle rhythm, almost as if something inside had shifted without making any noise. The playlist that had been discovered by accident was no longer just a link on a phone. It had become a quiet companion, something that brought comfort in the moments when life felt heavy. And slowly, the music began to shape the days in a way nothing else had. Each morning started the same way it always had, with the usual rush to get ready and face another long list of tasks. But now, there was a difference. Before stepping out, a few minutes were taken to listen to the soft notes of Mozart or Chopin. Those few minutes didn't change the world outside, but they changed the way the heart entered it. The mind felt clearer. The body felt lighter. The day didn't seem as overwhelming. It was surprising how simple it was. Just a melody. Just a few soft notes, but the effect was strong enough to create a shift. Classical music had become a pause in the noise. It's a moment of stillness before the busy hours began. During work, the stress still came, but there was a quiet way of dealing with it now. Whenever things became too much, earphones were picked up, and for just a few seconds, the gentle sound of a piano washed through the mind. It wasn't possible to listen for long during the workday, but even a moment helped. It was like taking a deep breath from the inside. By the end of the week, the playlist had become something familiar, something comforting. The tracks were no longer just music. They were small lessons in calmness. Each piece felt different. Some were soft and warm. Some were deep and emotional. Some carried energy, but a peaceful kind. the kind that didn't rush the mind but encouraged it. At night, the routine continued. The lights would dim, the room would grow quiet, and the playlist played softly in the background. It wasn't loud enough to distract, only enough to fill the space with peace. And every night, sleep came a little faster. One evening, after a long and draining day, the music felt especially comforting. The mind had been running all day, chasing thoughts that felt too big to manage. Bills needed to be paid. Work was demanding more every week, and personal worries kept adding weight to the already heavy days. Nothing dramatic had happened, but everything together felt like too much. When the playlist started, the first melody was a gentle one. It's a slow piano piece with light notes falling like soft raindrops. It touched something inside immediately. The body relaxed before a single full minute had passed. The breathing slowed, the shoulders loosened, and for a moment, the world felt quiet again. There was something healing in the music that couldn't always be explained. It didn't solve problems, it didn't erase responsibilities, but it changed the way the heart carried them. Listening to classical music felt like sitting beside a calm river after a stormy day. The water didn't speak, but it offered peace. As the tracks continued, deeper feelings began to rise. Chopin's soft melodies made the mind drift to memories long forgotten, quiet mornings from childhood. Peaceful walks on open roads, moments when life had felt simple. The music didn't pull these memories forcefully. It simply opened a door that had been closed for years. There were moments when the eyes felt heavy with emotion, not from sadness, but from the soft reminder that life had once been gentle. And maybe it could be gentle again. Later that week, something unexpected happened. While taking a short walk in the afternoon, the distant sound of a violin drifted through the air. It wasn't coming from a building or a speaker. It was coming from a small corner of a nearby park, where an older musician played for anyone who cared to listen. The notes floated in the air like they had no weight. The sound was a little rough, not perfect, but it carried warmth, the warmth of someone who loved what they were playing. People walked by quickly, barely paying attention. But the music pulled the heart closer. Standing there, listening, the feeling was familiar, but alive in a new way. It wasn't the polished sound from the playlist. This was raw, human sound. The violinist closed his eyes now and then, lost in the music, letting it guide his hands gently. For a long moment, everything around seemed to disappear. The noise of cars, the chatter of people, the usual stress, they faded into the background. Only the violin remained. That brief moment in the park felt important, like a reminder that music wasn't just something to listen to through earphones. It was something to feel, something that connected people, something that had the power to rebuild inner peace. The walk continued after that, but something had changed. The world felt a little softer, a little slower. Even the breeze felt different, something the senses had forgotten to notice. That evening, the playlist was played again, but this time, it felt deeper. It wasn't just music anymore. It felt like a part of life, a part that was slowly helping heal the tired parts of the soul in the days that followed. The playlist became a routine, almost like brushing teeth or drinking water. Without it, something felt incomplete. When work became stressful, the music reminded the heart to breathe. When sadness crept in quietly, the music carried it gently. When the nights felt long, the music shortened them, sometimes late at night. The mind wandered to thoughts about the people who created these melodies. Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven, names from old books and forgotten classrooms. What had their lives been like? What pain had they carried? What joys had they known? What moments had inspired them to pour their souls into their music? It was strange to think about people from centuries ago becoming a part of daily life now. Their struggles, their emotions, their dreams, they all lived inside the notes that played softly in a modern room. One night, Beethoven's piece came on, one with a deep, emotional flow. It carried strength, sadness, and hope all at once. As the sound filled the room, it felt like the composer himself understood every unspoken worry, every quiet fear, every tired thought. The music felt like a gentle voice saying, "You are not alone in what you feel." In that moment, something inside softened even more. For a long time, the heart had carried everything in silence, believing no one understood. But the music proved otherwise. It showed that human emotion hadn't changed much over time. People from the past had felt the same things: stress, sadness, longing, hope, and somehow that realization brought comfort. Weeks passed, and the playlist became an essential part of life. Each track had a mood of its own. Some brought calmness, some brought warmth. Some carried an emotional depth that made the heart feel understood, and some simply made the mind relax. One evening, after finishing dinner, the playlist was played softly while sitting near the window. The sky outside was a deep blue, slowly turning darker as night approached. The lights in the buildings across flickered like small stars. The world outside felt peaceful. As Mozart's gentle melody filled the air, a sense of gratitude rose inside. Gratitude for something so simple, yet so healing. Gratitude for the person who uploaded the playlist. Gratitude for the composers whose music lived through time. Gratitude for the chance discovery that changed the days. It was clear now this was more than just a playlist. It was a lifeline. A safe place to return to. A quiet friend in a loud world. The music continued to play softly as thoughts wandered. Life was still busy. Work was still stressful. Responsibilities still demanded time. None of that had disappeared. But the heart was different. The mind had found a new strength, a quiet one. And in that calm moment by the window, with the soft glow of lights outside and the soothing sound of classical music filling the room, one simple thought came: peace doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives gently, note by note, without asking for attention. And sometimes it arrives when it's needed the most. This was only the beginning of that journey. A journey shaped not by big events, but by small moments of calm that came from the timeless beauty of Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven, and the quiet magic of music that touches the heart without saying a single word. The days continued to move forward, and life slowly began to feel different in small, almost unnoticeable ways. The stress was still there, the responsibilities still waited. But there was something new growing inside, a quiet understanding that peace could be found, even on the hardest days. And the music, the soft and gentle classical pieces, had become the heart of that growing calm. Mornings became softer. Instead of waking up with a rush of panic about the day, there was now a simple moment of stillness. Before stepping into the busyness, the playlist played softly in the background. It had become a daily ritual, something that set the tone for the hours ahead. Even if the upcoming tasks were heavy, beginning the day with calmness made it easier to carry everything. There were mornings when the sun peeked through the curtains, filling the room with warm light, while Mozart's soft notes danced gently through the air. Those moments felt like small gifts, reminders that peace didn't always come from big changes. Sometimes it came from the quiet things: a melody, a soft breeze, a moment of reflection. As the days passed, the music began to shape not just mornings and nights, but everything in between. During breaks at work, whenever stress rose like a wave ready to crash, a few minutes with Chopin's piano could settle the heart again. The melodies had become a way of breathing, a way of returning to oneself. With time, something beautiful started to happen. The music didn't only calm the mind. It began to open parts of the heart that had been closed for years. It brought forgotten memories forward, memories of laughter, of peaceful afternoons, of people who once made life feel full. One evening, after a long day, a track began that carried a deep emotional pull. It was a quiet, reflective piece. As the notes moved slowly, almost as if whispering, something inside shifted. Memories of childhood rose like soft waves running along open fields, listening to the sound of rain on rooftops. Sitting under a tree during warm evenings, these memories were gentle. They didn't hurt. They felt like reminders of a time when life had been simpler, when joy came easily, when nothing felt too heavy. The music didn't force these moments out. It simply made space for them. Some nights, the emotional weight of the music felt strong, not in a painful way, but in a way that reached deeper than anything else had for a long time. There were moments when the eyes filled with quiet tears, not because of sadness, but because the music made the heart feel seen. There was something healing about being reminded that emotions were real, understandable, human. The music held those emotions gently without overwhelming the mind. It provided a safe space to feel again, and slowly the heart began to open. One weekend, something unexpected happened. With more free time than usual, there was a natural pull to explore more about the composers whose music had brought so much peace. Casual curiosity turned into a quiet search. Their stories emerged, stories filled with their struggles, dreams, hardships, and moments of deep emotion. Learning about them made the music feel even more meaningful. These weren't just melodies created for beauty. They were the reflections of real lives, real experiences. Mozart wasn't only a name. He was a person who carried his own worries while creating gentle, playful music that still touched the world centuries later. Chopin had battled sadness and longing, pouring his emotions into the piano in ways that could still be felt now. Beethoven, who created some of the world's most powerful music, carried pain that he hid behind his deep strength. He wrote pieces that spoke louder than words ever could. Knowing this didn't make the music heavier, it made it more human. It made it easier to connect with. It made every note feel like a message from someone who had also walked through emotional storms. After reading about them for a while, the playlist was played again. This time, each track felt richer, fuller. The understanding of the composers' lives made the melodies feel personal. They weren't just songs. They were stories, emotions, cries for comfort, and celebrations of life. That night, the music played softly in the room, and it felt like being part of a larger human experience. It felt like sharing the same emotional space with people who had lived long ago, who'd felt many of the same things. The healing continued in small ways. On days when the mind felt overwhelmed, Beethoven's deep tones became a strength. On nights when the heart felt fragile, Mozart's soft melodies offered warmth. When thoughts felt tangled, Chopin's gentle piano helped untangle them. The music began to influence the way life was seen. Every emotion started to feel meaningful, not something to hide or rush through. The hard days felt less frightening because the music had shown that emotions were a part of life, not something to be afraid of. There was a day when something simple but important happened. While walking home, a street musician played a soft tune that carried through the evening air. It was not a famous melody, not a piece from any composer known, but it still had the same power. The tune floated gently, mixing with the breeze. People hurried by without paying attention, but the melody reached the heart immediately, just like the classical pieces did. It became clear that music didn't need to be perfect or famous to heal. It only needed to be honest standing there. Listening to that simple tune, the heart felt calm, the worries of the day softened, and for a few minutes, the world felt peaceful again. When the musician finished, he gave a small smile to the few who had stopped to listen. That moment, though short, stayed in the mind long after walking away. Music had become a bridge between the inner world and the outer world. A bridge between emotions and peace. One evening, while listening to a slow piano piece, a realization came quietly. The healing wasn't coming from escaping life. It was coming from understanding it. The music wasn't pushing away emotions. It was helping process them. There was a deeper sense of clarity now. Thoughts that once felt tangled now had space to settle. Feelings that once felt overwhelming now made sense. The music helped guide those emotions into calmness. With that understanding, life began to feel gentler. Not because problems disappeared, but because the heart learned to carry them differently. Some days were still difficult. There were still moments of exhaustion, moments of doubt, moments when everything felt heavy again. But those moments didn't feel hopeless anymore. The music became a reminder that peace could always be found again. That calmness was only a melody away. It was surprising how something as simple as a playlist had started to change everything inside. But that was the beauty of it. Healing didn't always come from grand gestures or dramatic changes. Sometimes it came from small things, a soft melody, a gentle reminder. A quiet moment with music. As more days passed, the playlist continued to guide the evenings. The room would dim, the night air would settle, and the music would fill the space with peace. Sitting near the window one night, watching the faint lights of passing cars, a soft realization arrived. Life had become more bearable, more meaningful, more connected. The music had become a companion, not just a background sound, but a friend who stayed through every emotion in that moment. With the soft glow of the night outside and the gentle sound of Chopin playing in the room, the heart felt something it hadn't felt in a long time. Healing, not loud, not dramatic. Just a slow, steady, warm kind of healing. And as the music continued, there was a quiet promise inside, the promise that this journey of calmness, reflection, and emotional growth was still unfolding. Note by note, night by night, the playlist that had once appeared by chance had now become a part of life. A guide, a comfort, a source of light. And this was only the beginning of what it would bring. The weeks continued to unfold, each one carrying its own challenges, its own small victories, and its own quiet moments of peace brought by the music. What had started as a simple playlist discovered by chance had now become a steady part of life, almost like a silent companion walking beside every step. The heart felt lighter than before, the mind calmer, and even the heavy days didn't sink as deep as they once did. But the real change, the deeper shift, was still quietly approaching. One cool evening, after a long day that seemed to stretch endlessly, there was a strong desire to step outside for fresh air. The night sky had a certain softness, and the breeze carried the scent of distant flowers mixed with city air. It felt like the kind of night where something meaningful might happen, even if nothing had been planned. Walking through the quiet streets, the mind drifted gently. The playlist had been playing earlier, and some of the melodies still echoed inside, leaving a feeling of warmth. Each step felt slow, relaxed, unhurried. For once, there was no rush to reach anywhere, as the path led toward a nearby park. Distant sounds of instruments floated through the air, soft at first, almost hidden, but unmistakably real. It wasn't a speaker. It wasn't a phone. It was live music. Curiosity pulled the steps forward, at the center of the park. Small lights had been hung between the trees, glowing softly like warm stars. A group of musicians stood in a circle, tuning their instruments. People gathered around, some sitting on benches, some standing, some leaning against trees. A small, handwritten sign placed near. The musicians said they were performing simple classical pieces for anyone who wished to listen. The scene felt magical. Almost unreal, a quiet concert in the heart of a busy world. Finding a place to sit, the surroundings seemed to settle. The breeze slowed, the chatter softened, and soon the first notes began. A violin floated gently through the air, followed by a soft piano and a steady cello. The sound was warm, real, full of emotion, the kind of sound that traveled deep into the heart. It was different from the playlist. The playlist brought peace, but this brought connection. This was music with breath, with presence, human energy behind every note. As the musicians continued, the heart softened even more. The mind drifted through memories, through thoughts, through feelings that had been hidden for a long time. It wasn't sadness, but a tender kind of reflection. The music had a way of opening the soul gently, as if inviting it to breathe. At one point, they played a familiar melody, one from the playlist, one that had often played during quiet nights. Hearing it live created a new kind of emotion. It felt fuller, more alive. The notes carried the weight of the musicians' feelings, slight tremble of their hands, the small movements of their breaths. For a long moment, everything else disappeared. There were no worries, no deadlines, no stress, only the sound of the violin, the warmth of the evening lights, and the simple truth that music had become something deeply important. When the piece ended, the applause rose softly, not too loud, not too sharp, just enough to show appreciation. The musicians smiled, and the feeling in the air was pure and kind, sitting there, surrounded by strangers yet feeling connected. A powerful realization unfolded. This music wasn't just something to listen to. It was something to experience, something to feel in the chest, in the breath. In the quiet spaces of the mind, Life had been heavy for so long, and for the first time, there was a reminder that the world still held beauty simple, gentle beauty. As the concert continued, each piece told its own story. The soft ones felt like warm blankets on a cold night. The deeper ones felt like oceans vast, emotional, carrying memories from far away. And the energetic pieces brought a sense of joy, a spark of life that made the heart feel lighter. The musicians played for nearly an hour. When they finished, they bowed with humble smiles, and people slowly drifted away, talking softly about how lovely the evening had been. But instead of leaving immediately, staying behind for a moment felt right. Sitting on the bench, the music still lingering in the air, the heart felt a strange mix of peace and longing. Not longing for something missing, but longing for more moments like this. Moments where the world slowed down and allowed space for quiet beauty. The walk home felt different. The streetlights shimmered softly. The road seemed gentler, and even the distant sounds of traffic felt less harsh. The world hadn't changed, but something inside had. When home came into view, the first thing that happened was turning on the playlist. Music filled the room again, but now it felt richer, deeper. The memory of the live performance intertwined with the sound coming through the speakers, creating a feeling that was almost magical. That night, sleep arrived with ease, wrapped in the softness of piano notes. In the following days, the memory of the park concert stayed close. It replayed in the mind during quiet moments, bringing warmth. The playlist now carried extra meaning, like a door leading not just to calmness, but to a deeper emotional world. Soon, there was a new desire not just to listen, but to understand. Not just to hear, but to feel deeper. Not just to enjoy the music, but to learn its language. So the journey continued. There were moments spent reading more about the composers, learning how they lived, what they felt, why they created the music they did. Their stories were filled with struggle, passion, hope, heartbreak, and genius. They had lived through storms of their own, and somehow their emotions survived through time, reaching hearts even now. This understanding opened a new door inside. It created a connection, a bridge between past and present, between their lives and the listener's life. Classical music no longer felt distant or old. It felt alive. One afternoon while sitting near a window with soft music playing, a quiet thought appeared, an idea that felt both exciting and intimidating. What if it was possible to learn an instrument? Not to become great, not to perform, but simply to feel the music even more deeply. The thought stayed. It returned again that night, and again the next morning. There was no pressure attached to it, just a gentle curiosity. Maybe learning a little piano could bring even more peace. Maybe touching the keys, even clumsily, could create a deeper bond with the music that had already changed so much. One evening, after thinking about it for days, the decision was made. Not a big decision, not a dramatic one, but a simple one. To try, to learn, to explore. A small keyboard was ordered. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. It's just something to start with. When it arrived, it was unboxed, slowly, carefully, with a sense of quiet excitement. The plastic still smelled new. The keys looked untouched. And the moment felt strangely emotional. The first touch of the keys felt different from anything else. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was real. Every press carried a tiny vibration that connected the fingers to the heart. The first attempts at playing were simple, awkward, uncertain. There were mistakes, pauses, and moments of laughter at how clumsy the fingers felt. But there was also a deep sense of joy, a joy that didn't need perfection. Each day brought a few minutes of practice. Not lessons, not pressure, just gentle exploration. And slowly, the fingers began to understand. The notes became clearer. The melodies became recognizable. One evening, a simple piece from Mozart was attempted. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it carried the same gentleness, the same hope, the same softness that had been felt in the playlist. And that moment became a turning point, because it showed something important. Music wasn't just something to listen to, it was something to live with, something to create. something to experience with the heart. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet joy. The playlist played every morning and night, guiding the emotions. The keyboard allowed a new kind of expression, a new way of understanding the music. Life still had its hard moments-long days. Stress, tiredness, but the music made everything easier to carry. It brought balance. It brought clarity. It brought peace. There were evenings when playing the keyboard felt emotional. Moments when a single note carried memories or feelings that had been hidden. The music created a safe space for everything: hope, sadness, joy, reflection. And through this journey, a deeper truth became clear. Healing wasn't a single moment. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a path. One walked slowly, gently, with music guiding each step. Classical music had become more than sound. It had become a teacher, a friend, a guide toward a life that felt more connected, more meaningful, more aware. And as the nights continued to pass, with the soft glow of a lamp and the gentle notes of Mozart, Chopin, and Beethoven filling the air, the heart knew that the journey wasn't ending. It was only evolving. The music had opened something inside a quiet space where healing could grow, where hope could return, where life could feel beautiful again. And that space continued to expand, note by note, moment by moment, leading toward the next chapter of this quiet, powerful transformation. The days that followed the concert seemed brighter, even though nothing dramatic had changed in the outside world. Life carried the same routines, the same deadlines, the same responsibilities, and something inside the listener had shifted. It was as if a quiet light had been turned on within, guiding each step with a bit more calm and clarity. Classical music had become a part of daily living now. It's not as a background noise, but as a source of comfort, strength, and reflection. Each morning began with a soft track playing in the background. Sometimes it was a gentle piece by Chopin that made the start of the day feel slow and peaceful. Other times, it was a simple melody by Mozart that felt almost like a small smile in musical form. And on heavier mornings, when thoughts felt tangled or the heart felt heavier than usual, Beethoven's deeper notes carried the weight in a way that felt strangely comforting. The listener found joy in small routines. A warm cup of tea beside the window while letting a piano piece wash over the mind became a habit. The sound helped shape the mood for the day, and slowly the world felt less rushed. People around noticed the change as well. There was more patience in responses, more understanding in conversations, and more softness in the way challenges were handled. Music had become a quiet companion that helped shape a calmer version of life. There were days when old habits tried to return, days when frustration crept in and stress rose again. On such days, the mind drifted back to the playlist that had become a shelter. One track after another, the music brought the thoughts back to a balanced place. It was surprising how something as simple as sound could bring the heart back to its center so gently. Evenings became more intentional, instead of ending the day with noise from social media or long hours of mindless scrolling. The listener chose peaceful music that helped slow the mind down. The room often filled with soft melodies that made the space feel warm and safe. The music created an atmosphere where the mind could think clearly, emotions could rest without rushing. Sometimes memories surfaced, some warm, some sad, some forgotten over time. But the music made each memory feel easier to sit with. There was something healing in the way classical melodies gave space to thoughts that had been buried for years. With each passing week, the listener felt lighter, as if music had been quietly helping sort through the emotional weight that life had piled up. The journal that started weeks ago, now filled with notes, emotions, and reflections. Each track had its own page, describing how it made the listener feel, or what moment it helped calm. Reading through these pages brought both comfort and joy. It felt like watching a personal journey unfold in simple, honest words. One afternoon, while sitting by the window and listening to a peaceful piece by Mozart, the listener realized how much life had changed. It's not in big ways, but in the quiet places that matter most. The heart felt steadier. The mind felt clearer. Challenges still came, but they no longer felt impossible. There was a sense of inner balance that had not existed for a long time. This new calmness also opened doors to connection. the listener. Shared the playlist with a close friend who had been struggling with sleepless nights. The friend found comfort in it almost instantly. Seeing this brought a warm feeling. It made the listener realize that healing often begins in small steps, and sharing those steps can help others find their own peace. There were moments when the listener wondered how life would have felt without ever discovering this playlist. The thought brought a quiet gratitude. Music had entered the life at just the right moment, offering comfort when things felt overwhelming. It had become a gentle guide, showing a way to breathe, relax, and reflect. The more time passed, the more classical music became a natural part of daily living. The listener explored new pieces, learned about the lives of the composers, and felt inspired by their struggles and strength. Knowing that people centuries ago had poured their emotions into these notes made the music feel even more meaningful. It created a connection across time, reminding the listener that human emotions, struggles, and hopes were universal. One peaceful evening, while listening to a soft piano melody, the listener felt an urge to try something new. It's not to learn professionally or perform, but simply to understand the instrument more deeply. So a small keyboard was brought home. There was no rush, no pressure, only a gentle curiosity. Each time a key was pressed, even if the sound was far from perfect, it felt special. It felt like being part of the music instead of just listening to it. The slow journey into learning simple tunes became a joyful part of the routine. It was not easy, but it was calming. Every new sound felt like a small achievement. These moments of learning brought a sense of purpose that was soothing. The mind, something gentle to focus on, and the heart, something new to love. Weeks turned into months, and the playlist continued to be a quiet companion. Even on busy days, even on hard days, the listener always returned to it. It had become a reminder of how far the journey had come, from a place of exhaustion and emotional weariness to a place of calm, balance, and inner strength. One night, while the playlist played softly in the background, the listener sat near the window, watching the sky slowly turn dark. The music blended with the evening air in a way that made everything feel peaceful. In that moment, the listener understood something simple yet powerful. Peace is not something that arrives all at once. It grows quietly, moment by moment, choice by choice. And sometimes, it begins with something small, like stumbling upon a playlist titled 50 Ultimate Classical Masterpieces for Soulful Relaxation. That small moment had shaped the entire journey. It had guided the listener back to themselves, helped heal old heaviness, and created space for new beginnings. The music had become more than sound. It had become a friend, a companion, and a guide. As the night deepened and the final notes played gently, the listener smiled softly, feeling grateful for every track, every quiet moment, and every small step toward a calmer life. The world outside still moved fast, but inside, there was peace, and with the playlist still playing, the journey continued. Not perfect, not easy, but beautifully human.